Young millionaire Flash married a homeless girl to avoid forced marriage, not knowing she was. Ethan Crawford sat in his sleek glass-walled office overlooking the glittering skyline of Manhattan. The hum of the city below was muffled by the thick pain, but he could still sense its relentless energy. His mother, Margaret Crawford, was perched on the edge of his desk, her signature pearl necklace glinting under the overhead light. She was poised, immovable, and utterly determined. "You don't have a choice, Ethan," she declared, her voice sharp but controlled. "Vanessa Whitmore is perfect for you. The Whitmore merger will secure the future of Crawford Enterprises. It's what your father would have wanted." Ethan's jaw clenched as he leaned back in his leather chair, the weight of his mother's words pressing down on him. He had spent his entire life under the thumb of the Crawford legacy. Expectations had been placed on him the moment he could walk, and every step since had been orchestrated by his mother. But this was too much. "I'm not a pawn in your business strategies, Mother," Ethan shot back, his tone cool but defiant. "I won't marry Vanessa. I don't even like her." Margaret narrowed her eyes. "You don't have to like her, you just have to marry her. It's a partnership, not a fairy tale." Ethan stood abruptly, pacing toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sprawling city below seemed to mock him with its endless possibilities, none of which felt accessible to him. He thought of Vanessa, polished, cunning, and utterly devoid of warmth. She was everything he despised in his family's world of cutthroat business dealings. "I'll find someone else," Ethan said suddenly, spinning to face his mother. Margaret scoffed. "Someone else? Who? Some woman you meet on the street?" "Don't be ridiculous, Ethan." Her laughter grated on his nerves, and the rebellious spark within him ignited. The idea was absurd, but the thought of marrying a stranger felt less suffocating than the thought of spending a lifetime with Vanessa. He wanted freedom, even if it was fleeting. "Fine," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I'll marry the next woman I meet." Margaret froze, her perfectly manicured hand hovering midair. "What are you talking about?" "You heard me," he replied, grabbing his coat and heading for the door. "If you're so insistent on a merger, find someone else to play matchmaker. I'll handle my own life." Before she could protest, Ethan was gone, leaving behind his mother's stunned expression and the sterile confines of the Crawford empire. He stepped into the cool evening air, the bustling noise of the city grounding him. As he walked aimlessly through the streets, he replayed the argument in his mind. He knew his mother wouldn't let the issue rest. She would send Vanessa after him, make calls, and twist arms until she got what she wanted. He needed a plan, and fast. Ethan found himself in a quiet park, far from the chaos of his usual world. The dim light of a street lamp cast a soft glow over a bench where a young woman sat, clutching a steaming cup of coffee. Her clothes were worn, her hair slightly unkempt, but there was a quiet strength about her. She looked up as he approached, her bright green eyes locking with his. "Rough night?" she asked, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "You could say that," Ethan replied, surprised by the ease in her tone. He didn't usually engage with strangers, but something about her made him pause. "I get it," she said, sipping her coffee. "Life has a way of throwing curveballs." Ethan chuckled dryly. "More like a wrecking ball." She laughed, a sound so genuine it caught him off guard. "Trust me, I've been there." As they talked, Ethan learned her name was Lily Harper. She had been living on the streets for nearly a year after a series of unfortunate events left her with nothing. But despite her situation, she exuded a resilience that Ethan found captivating. Then an idea struck him, bold, reckless, and utterly unconventional. "Lily," he said, his tone suddenly serious, "what if I told you I could change your life? Right here, right now." She raised an eyebrow, her smile fading. "What are you talking about?" "I need a wife," Ethan said bluntly. "It's complicated, but if you agree to marry me, I'll make sure you're set for life." Lily stared at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and suspicion. "Are you joking?" "Not at all," Ethan replied, his gaze steady. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm serious. No strings attached, just 6 months of pretending. You'd be helping me more than you can imagine. She hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. Finally, she asked, Why me? Ethan smiled, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Because you're the first person I've met tonight who doesn't expect anything from me. And with that, the wheels of their improbable journey were set into motion. The following morning, Ethan couldn't shake the memory of his midnight conversation with Lily. Something about her wit, her resilience, and the quiet sadness in her eyes had stirred something within him. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, and for the first time in years, he felt like he had control over his destiny, even if it was reckless. Ethan decided to find her again. He retraced his steps to the park where they'd first met, scanning the benches and nearby paths. For a moment, he thought she might have been a figment of his imagination. Then, near a shaded corner of the park, he saw her. She was perched on the same bench, flipping through a battered paperback novel. A cup of coffee sat beside her, its steam curling in the crisp morning air. Lily, he called, his voice cutting through the hum of the city. She looked up, surprised to see him again. Her expression shifted quickly from curiosity to guardedness. You again? What are you doing here? I came to find you, Ethan admitted, walking toward her. Lily tilted her head, her green eyes narrowing slightly. That's not creepy at all, she quipped, but her tone lacked malice. Ethan chuckled, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Fair enough, but I meant what I said last night. I have a proposal for you. Lily closed her book and leaned back against the bench. Let me guess, you still need a wife? Exactly. Ethan's directness caught her off guard, and she studied him for a moment, as if trying to figure out his angle. Look, she said, crossing her arms. I appreciate the offer, really I do, but I don't know you, and this whole thing screams bad idea. Ethan sat down beside her, his usual air of confidence softened. I know it's crazy. I know I'm asking a lot, but you have nothing to lose, and I promise you'll come out of this better than you went in. All I need is 6 months. Lily frowned, her fingers fidgeting with the frayed edges of her scarf. Why me? You could ask anyone. Why pick a homeless girl? Because I don't want someone from my world, Ethan replied earnestly. I need someone who's real, someone who won't turn this into a business deal or try to manipulate me. Last night, you talked to me like a person, not a bank account. That's rare. Lily looked away, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, the only sounds were the distant chatter of passers-by and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. And what exactly are you offering? She asked finally, her voice cautious. Ethan took a deep breath. A 6-month marriage. You'll move into my home, attend events with me, and help me convince my family this is real. In return, I'll give you $500,000 when it's over. You can use it to rebuild your life, start fresh. No strings, no expectations beyond the agreement. Lily's lips parted in shock. $500,000? Ethan nodded. Yes, and if that's not enough, we can negotiate. She laughed, though it was tinged with disbelief. You're insane, you know that? Probably, Ethan admitted with a small smile. But I'm desperate, and I think you are too. His words hung in the air, uncomfortably true. Lily glanced down at her worn shoes, her mind racing. The offer was absurd, but the chance to leave her current life behind was tempting beyond measure. She thought of the nights spent sleeping on cold concrete, the endless hunger, the humiliation of being invisible to the world. And no funny business, she asked, meeting his gaze. None, Ethan promised. This is strictly business. You help me, and I help you. That's it. Lily sighed, running a hand through her messy hair. All right, Crawford, you've got yourself a deal. But if you screw me over, I swear I'll make you regret it. Ethan grinned, holding out his hand. Deal." As their hands shook, Lily felt a strange mix of dread and excitement. She didn't know what she was getting herself into, but one thing was certain: her life was about to change forever. The next 48 hours unfolded in a whirlwind that left Lily's head spinning. Ethan moved swiftly, orchestrating their marriage with the efficiency of a corporate takeover. He arranged everything: a lawyer to draft their agreement, a stylist to prepare Lily for their public appearances, and a private officiant to perform the ceremony. Lily, accustomed to scraping by on scraps, found herself overwhelmed by the sudden flood of luxury and attention. At the morning of the wedding, Lily stood in a plush dressing room at an exclusive boutique, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was almost unrecognizable. Her unkempt hair had been transformed into soft waves that framed her face, and the elegant ivory dress she wore hugged her figure perfectly. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she belonged in this world of wealth and opulence. "You clean up nicely," Ethan's voice came from the doorway. Lily turned, startled to see him standing there. He wore a tailored navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and confident stance. For the first time, she noticed how striking he was: sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and an air of command that seemed effortless. "You're not supposed to see the bride before the wedding," Lily said, trying to keep her voice light. Ethan smirked. "Good thing this isn't a real wedding then, huh?" His words brought her back to reality. This wasn't a fairy tale or a love story. It was a transaction, plain and simple. Lily straightened her shoulders, determined to keep her emotions in check. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice quieter. "We still have time to call it off." Ethan stepped closer, his expression softening. "I know it's not ideal, but it's what I need right now. And I promise, Lily, I'll make this worth your while." She nodded, unsure of what else to say. Ethan's sincerity was disarming, but she reminded herself to stay guarded. People like him didn't operate without an agenda. The ceremony took place in a private garden at one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels. The officiant, an older man with a kind face, stood beneath a canopy of white roses. A handful of Ethan's closest business associates and his assistant, Claire, were present to serve as witnesses. Margaret Crawford, however, was conspicuously absent, a fact that both relieved and unsettled Ethan. As Lily walked down the short aisle, escorted by one of Ethan's staff members, she couldn't help but feel out of place. The guests whispered among themselves, their curious gazes making her feel like an imposter. She kept her head high, refusing to show vulnerability. When she reached Ethan, he gave her a reassuring smile. "You've got this," he whispered, offering her his arm. The ceremony was brief and efficient, just as Ethan had promised. When the officiant asked if they took each other as husband and wife, Ethan's firm "I do" echoed with confidence. Lily hesitated for the briefest moment before answering. "I do," she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly. The officiant declared them husband and wife, and Ethan leaned in to place a light, chaste kiss on her cheek. Applause rippled through the small crowd, though Lily could sense the skepticism behind the smiles. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan announced, taking Lily's hand, "thank you for joining us on this special day. My wife and I are grateful for your support." The words felt surreal to Lily. Wife. She was someone's wife now. As the guests mingled after the ceremony, Ethan pulled Lily aside. "You did great," he said. "The hard part's over." "Hard part?" Lily arched an eyebrow. "You mean we're done pretending now?" Ethan chuckled. "Not quite. The real work begins tomorrow. My family, the media, and Vanessa, they're all going to test us. But we'll get through it. Together." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, and for a moment, Lily wondered if this arrangement might not be as cold as she'd expected. But then she remembered the terms of their agreement. 6 months. That was all this was. By the end of the day, Lily found herself in Ethan's penthouse, a sprawling, modern apartment high above the city. She wandered through the space, marveling at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist decor, and the breathtaking view of the Manhattan skyline. Ethan showed her to her room, a luxurious guest suite that rivaled anything she'd ever seen in magazines. "This is yours," he said. "Make yourself comfortable. If you need anything, just let Claire know." Lily hesitated in the doorway. "And you? Where will you be?" Ethan gestured toward the opposite end of the penthouse. "My room's down the hall. Don't worry, Lily. We'll keep things professional." She nodded, grateful for his respect, but still feeling a pang of unease. This wasn't the life she'd envisioned, but it was the life she'd agreed to, for now. As she closed the door behind her, Lily sank onto the edge of the king-sized bed, her mind racing. She was no longer homeless, no longer invisible. But as she stared out at the glittering city, she couldn't help but wonder, had she traded one kind of emptiness for another? And more importantly, what would happen if this delicate facade began to crumble? Life as Ethan Crawford's wife was a whirlwind Lily could barely keep up with. In the days following the wedding, she was thrust into a world of high-end luncheons, media appearances, and meticulously curated public outings. Ethan's assistant, Claire, worked tirelessly to coach Lily on everything from etiquette to the finer points of Ethan's world. Lily played her role well, but the mask she wore felt suffocating. Ethan, for his part, was surprisingly attentive. Despite the transactional nature of their marriage, he often checked in with her, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. He was charming in a way that disarmed her, but Lily reminded herself that this was a business arrangement. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man who viewed her as a convenient solution. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling charity event, Lily slipped away from the penthouse. She had learned the importance of maintaining her own space amid the chaos. Clutching a worn leather notebook, she found a quiet corner in Central Park, far from the glitz of her new life. She flipped through the notebook's pages, her fingers lingering on sketches and scribbled notes from a life she had left behind. Ethan noticed her absence almost immediately. Returning home to find the penthouse eerily quiet, he frowned. It wasn't like Lily to disappear without telling him. Claire reassured him she'd likely needed a break, but Ethan's unease persisted. He decided to wait for her, curiosity gnawing at him. When Lily returned hours later, she was greeted by Ethan's sharp voice. "Where were you?" Startled, she froze in the doorway. "I needed some air," she said, trying to sound casual. Ethan's gaze dropped to the notebook clutched in her hands. "What's that?" "It's nothing," she said quickly, shoving it into her bag. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Nothing, huh? You've been disappearing with nothing for the past few days. Are you hiding something, Lily?" Her heart raced as she considered how to respond. She had always been guarded about her past, and the thought of sharing it with Ethan terrified her. But the intensity in his eyes told her he wasn't going to let it go. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. It's personal, okay? I didn't think you'd care." "Try me," Ethan said, his tone softening. Lily hesitated, then handed him the notebook. "It's all I have left of my family," she admitted. Ethan flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. The notebook was filled with sketches of architectural designs, homes, buildings, and intricate layouts. Scattered among them were journal entries detailing Lily's life before she ended up on the streets. "You're an architect?" Ethan asked, surprised. "I was," Lily said quietly. "I graduated top of my class and landed a dream job at one of the best firms in the city. But..." Her voice faltered, and she looked away. "But what?" Ethan pressed gently. Lily took a deep breath. "My father was a real estate developer. He got involved in a bad deal with some powerful people. When everything fell apart, he was accused of fraud. The media tore us apart and my family lost everything. My parents died not long after. Stress, heartbreak, you name it. I tried to rebuild, but no one would hire me after the scandal. Eventually, I ran out of money and ended up where you found me." Ethan was silent, the weight of her story sinking in. "You didn't deserve that," he said finally. "Maybe not, but it happened," Lily said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "And now you know." Ethan closed the notebook and handed it back to her. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," he said. "Most people would have given up." Lily laughed humorlessly. "Maybe I should have. Look at me now, married to a billionaire in a sham marriage, pretending to be someone I'm not." Ethan's expression softened. "You're not pretending, Lily. You're surviving, and that's nothing to be ashamed of." His words caught her off guard, and for a moment she saw a vulnerability in him that mirrored her own. She realized then that Ethan wasn't as invincible as he seemed. Beneath the polished exterior was a man burdened by expectations he hadn't chosen. As the days passed, Ethan began to notice other things about Lily. She had a way of analyzing spaces, instinctively pointing out flaws in design or suggesting improvements. He started to see her not as a temporary fixture in his life, but as someone with untapped potential. Lily, too, began to see Ethan in a new light. He wasn't the cold, calculating businessman she had assumed he was. He was fiercely protective of the people he cared about, and his sharp wit often caught her off guard. Slowly, their interactions shifted from awkward to genuine. But Lily's past wasn't the only secret hanging over their marriage. Ethan, too, had skeletons in his closet, secrets that could threaten the fragile connection they were building. Unbeknownst to both of them, Vanessa Whitmore had hired a private investigator to dig into Lily's background. When she uncovered the details of Lily's fall from grace, she knew she had the perfect weapon to destroy Ethan's marriage and claim what she believed was rightfully hers. And so, while Lily and Ethan grew closer, a storm was brewing, one that would force them to confront their deepest fears and decide whether their fragile alliance could withstand the weight of the truth. The weeks following the wedding brought an unexpected rhythm to Lily and Ethan's lives. Their carefully orchestrated public appearances painted a picture of a fairy tale romance. But behind closed doors, they were still learning how to coexist. Surprisingly, they found themselves slipping into an easy camaraderie. Ethan often worked late into the night in his home office, and Lily would curl up on the living room couch with a book or her sketch pad. Occasionally, she would glance toward his office door, wondering what it was like to carry the weight of an empire. One evening, Ethan emerged from his office looking more exhausted than usual. Lily noticed the tension in his shoulders and the way he rubbed his temples. "Rough day?" she asked, closing her sketch pad. "More like a rough week," he admitted, collapsing onto the couch opposite her. "Dealing with board members who think they know everything is a special kind of torture." She smiled faintly. "You should try designing for clients who demand the impossible and then blame you when reality doesn't cooperate." Ethan chuckled, the sound breaking through the heaviness in the room. "Touché. So, you really were an architect, huh?" "Still am, technically," Lily said, shrugging. "Just a very unemployed one." Ethan studied her for a moment. "You know, you've got talent. I saw those sketches in your notebook. Have you ever thought about starting your own firm?" Lily laughed bitterly. "With what money? And even if I had it, no one in this city would work with me. My name's still mud in certain circles." Ethan frowned as if the idea bothered him more than it should have. "People like you don't stay down for long, Lily. You're too smart for that." His words lingered in the air, and for the first time, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Ethan wasn't just being polite. Maybe he actually believed in her. Their conversations grew deeper with time, moving beyond the superficial to topics that mattered. Ethan shared stories about his father's relentless ambition and how it had shaped his own career. Lily spoke of her parents, their warmth and kindness, and how much she missed them. One night, while they were reviewing plans for an upcoming charity gala, Ethan looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You know," he said, "I didn't expect this. to feel so easy. What do you mean? Lily asked, tilting her head. This, Ethan said, gesturing between them. Us. I thought it would be awkward or forced, but you make it comfortable. Lily felt her cheeks warm, but she quickly brushed it off. Don't get used to it, Crawford. This is still a business arrangement. Ethan grinned. Of course, Mrs. Crawford. But despite her protests, Lily couldn't deny that their dynamic was shifting. The ice was melting, and something deeper was beginning to take root. Their growing connection was tested sooner than either of them anticipated. It started at a glamorous gala hosted by one of Ethan's top investors. The ballroom was filled with Manhattan's elite, dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos, sipping champagne under glittering chandeliers. Lily had grown more comfortable navigating these events thanks to Claire's relentless coaching, but tonight felt different. She sensed eyes on her, whispers following her every move. Midway through the evening, a man approached them. He was older, with salt and pepper hair and a calculating smile. Ethan Crawford, he said, extending a hand. And this must be your lovely wife. Ethan shook the man's hand, his expression wary. Mr. Whitmore, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Lily stiffened. She recognized the name. This was Vanessa's father. Whitmore turned his attention to Lily, his smile sharpening. Lily Harper, isn't it? Or should I say, Lily Evans, heiress to one of the greatest scandals in this city's history. The color drained from Lily's face. She hadn't heard her maiden name in years, and hearing it now felt like a punch to the gut. Ethan stepped closer, his protective instincts kicking in. That's enough, Whitmore. Oh, I'm just making conversation, Whitmore said, feigning innocence. It's fascinating, isn't it? How life can turn on a dime. One day you're on top of the world and the next... He trailed off, his meaning clear. Lily forced herself to meet his gaze. I'm sure you know all about that, Mr. Whitmore, she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Whitmore's smile faltered and Ethan suppressed a smirk. If you'll excuse us, Ethan said, steering Lily away. Once they were out of earshot, Lily let out a shaky breath. How does he know about me? Vanessa, Ethan said grimly. She must have dug into your past. Lily felt a wave of anger and humiliation. She had worked so hard to keep her past buried, and now it was being used against her. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice sincere. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault, Lily said, though the words felt hollow. But this is exactly why I didn't want to get involved in your world. People like him will never let me forget where I came from. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her. You're not defined by your past, Lily. Don't let him, or anyone else, make you feel otherwise. His words were like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of despair. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could rewrite her story. But the encounter with Whitmore wasn't the end of their troubles. The following day, tabloids splashed Lily's past across their front pages, painting her as a gold digger who had manipulated Ethan into marriage. The headlines were brutal, the photos even worse. Grainy shots of her on the streets juxtaposed with images of her in designer gowns. Ethan was furious. I'll handle this, he said, pacing his office. I'll call my lawyers, get them to issue a statement. No, Lily said firmly. Let them talk. I'm not ashamed of who I am. Her defiance impressed Ethan, but it also made him worry. He knew the damage the media could do, and he was determined to protect her, even if it meant confronting his own family and the ghosts of his past. As the storm raged around them, Ethan and Lily found themselves drawn even closer. Their partnership deepened, transforming into something neither of them had anticipated. But lurking in the shadows was a truth neither of them could escape, a truth that could either shatter their fragile bond or bring them closer than ever before. The fallout from the tabloids was swift and brutal. Ethan's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages, His inbox flooded with inquiries from investors, board members, and even friends questioning the legitimacy of his marriage. Meanwhile, Lily found herself thrust into an unrelenting media spotlight, every detail of her life scrutinized and dissected. The most damaging blow, however, came from within Ethan's own circle. Vanessa Whitmore, the spurned socialite, had been biding her time, and now she saw an opportunity to strike. Fueled by a mixture of humiliation and vengeance, Vanessa was determined to dismantle Ethan's marriage and reclaim her position in his life. Vanessa's plan began with a subtle but calculated move. She invited Ethan to a private meeting under the guise of discussing a lucrative business opportunity. Ethan, wary but curious, agreed to meet her at a high-end restaurant. "Ethan," Vanessa began, her tone syrupy sweet as she sipped her wine. "I'm here as a friend. This isn't about us. Well, not entirely." Ethan raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "I find that hard to believe." Vanessa laughed lightly, brushing off his skepticism. "I know you think I'm bitter about her," she said, her voice dropping an octave as she referred to Lily. "But I'm genuinely concerned for you. The board is in an uproar. Investors are worried about the optics of this scandal. It's not just your reputation on the line, it's the entire Crawford legacy." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And you think that's my wife's fault?" Vanessa leaned forward, her expression earnest. "It's not about fault, Ethan. It's about perception. She's dragging you down, whether you see it or not. But I can help you fix this." "Let me guess," Ethan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your solution involves me leaving Lily and crawling back to you." Vanessa smiled, unbothered by his tone. "I'm offering you a lifeline. You and I both know this marriage is a farce. End it now, and I'll help you repair the damage. Together, we can salvage your reputation and secure the Whitmore-Crawford merger. It's what your family wants, and frankly, it's what's best for everyone." Ethan's fists clenched under the table. "What's best for everyone?" he repeated, his voice cold. "Or what's best for you?" Vanessa's composure faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Think about it, Ethan. You can't keep propping up someone like her. She'll only drag you deeper into this mess." Ethan stood abruptly, throwing his napkin onto the table. "I don't need your help, Vanessa, and I certainly don't need your advice about my wife." As he walked away, Vanessa's smile turned predatory. If Ethan wouldn't listen, she'd have to take matters into her own hands. The next phase of Vanessa's plan was far less subtle. She leaked a series of damning stories to the press, including fabricated claims that Lily had coerced Ethan into marriage by threatening to expose his family's secrets. The media frenzy intensified, and soon Ethan's board of directors called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Margaret Crawford, Ethan's mother, was furious. "This is exactly what I warned you about," she said, her voice echoing through the conference room. "You've jeopardized everything we've built for a woman who doesn't belong in our world." Ethan, seated at the head of the table, kept his composure. "Lily isn't the problem," he said firmly. "The problem is people like Vanessa and anyone else who thinks they can control my life." Margaret's glare could have melted steel. "You're deluding yourself if you think this marriage can survive. Do you really believe she can handle the scrutiny, the pressure?" Ethan met his mother's gaze, unflinching. "Lily is stronger than you think." The meeting ended in a tense stalemate, with Ethan refusing to back down. But as he left the boardroom, he couldn't shake the gnawing worry that Vanessa might succeed in her campaign to destroy Lily. At home, Lily was struggling in her own way. She avoided public places, knowing the paparazzi would be waiting to ambush her. The comments on social media were vicious, with strangers accusing her of being a manipulative gold digger. Ethan found her in the living room, staring blankly at the TV, which was tuned to a news channel replaying yet another hit piece about her. "You shouldn't watch that," Ethan said, sitting beside her. "It's hard not to," Lily replied, her voice hollow. "They don't even know me, but they're so sure they do." Ethan reached for her hand, his touch grounding her. They don't matter. What matters is what you and I know to be true. Lily turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. And what is that, Ethan? That this marriage is just a deal? That I'll never be more than the girl with the scandalous past? You're more than that, Ethan said, his voice firm. You're smart, talented, and stronger than anyone I know. And if they can't see that, it's their loss. For the first time, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Ethan's words weren't just comforting. They felt real, as though he believed them wholeheartedly. But Vanessa wasn't done. She had one final card to play. She arranged a press conference where she presented evidence of Lily's alleged schemes, fake emails, doctored photos, and a damning narrative that painted Lily as a con artist. Ethan and Lily watched the press conference from the penthouse, their fury mounting with every lie Vanessa told. I won't let her get away with this, Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. We're going to fight back. Lily hesitated. Ethan, what if she wins? What if the world believes her? Then we'll show them the truth, Ethan said, his eyes blazing with determination. Together. For the first time, Lily felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for what they might be able to achieve as a team. But as Vanessa's web of lies tightened around them, they knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges that would test their resilience and their growing connection. The tension between Ethan and Vanessa reached a boiling point, but the real threat lay deeper than either of them realized. As Ethan's legal team began dismantling Vanessa's fabricated claims, they uncovered something unexpected in Lily's past, a connection that could change everything. One of Ethan's investigators came to him late one evening with a thick file. Mr. Crawford, you need to see this, he said, placing it on Ethan's desk. What is it? Ethan asked, flipping it open. Inside were court documents, bank records, and sealed files from Lily's father's real estate empire. A name leaped off the page, Whitmore Properties. Ethan's brows furrowed. Whitmore? As in Vanessa's family? The investigator nodded. Lily's father didn't lose everything by chance. It was orchestrated. The Whitmore family used insider connections and forged documents to frame him for fraud. They then acquired his assets at a fraction of their value. Ethan's stomach churned as he pieced it together. Vanessa's family had ruined Lily's life, and now they were trying to do it again. Ethan didn't waste time. He called Lily into his office and laid the evidence before her. I need you to see this, he said, his voice gentle. Lily's eyes widened as she skimmed the documents, her hand trembling. This can't be real. My father... He wasn't a perfect man, but he was honest. He wouldn't... He didn't, Ethan interjected. Your father was set up, Lily. Everything you've been through, your family's downfall, your struggles, it was all because of them. Tears filled Lily's eyes, but anger quickly followed. Vanessa's family did this? She whispered, her voice shaking with fury. Ethan nodded. And they're not stopping. But we can fight this. We have proof now. Lily stood, her shoulders squaring. For the first time in years, she felt a surge of purpose. Then let's take them down. Together, they devised a plan to expose the Whitmores. Ethan's team compiled the evidence into a damning report, and Lily prepared to confront the ghosts of her past. The night before they were set to present their findings, Ethan and Lily sat in the penthouse, reviewing their strategy. Are you ready for this? Ethan asked, his voice soft. Lily nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. I've spent so long running from my past. It's time I face it. Ethan reached out, covering her hand with his. You're not facing it alone. Their eyes met, and for a moment the weight of their situation melted away. In its place was something unspoken, something neither of them was ready to name, but both could feel. The press conference was a spectacle. Media outlets from across the city gathered to hear Ethan Crawford and his wife address the storm of rumors. Vanessa, confident that her narrative would dominate, watched from a private suite in the same building, unaware of what was about to unfold. Lily took a deep breath as she stepped onto the stage beside Ethan. The cameras flashed, and the murmurs in the room quieted as she began to speak. Over the past weeks, I've been accused of things I didn't do, labeled as someone I'm not, and dragged through the mud by people who think they can silence me. Today I'm here to tell my side of the story, and to reveal the truth about those who tried to destroy my life. She gestured to the screen behind her, where Ethan's legal team displayed the evidence they had uncovered. The room erupted as reporters scrambled to process the shocking revelations: forged documents, fraudulent deals, and the Whitmore family's role in orchestrating the downfall of Lily's father. Ethan took the mic next, his voice steady and commanding. My wife has endured enough. This isn't just about clearing her name, it's about justice. The Whitmore family thought they could operate above the law. They were wrong. Vanessa, watching the broadcast, paled as the evidence stacked up against her family. Her carefully constructed plan to destroy Lily had backfired spectacularly. The fallout was immediate. The media turned on the Whitmores, demanding answers. Investors pulled out of their projects, and legal investigations loomed. But the press conference wasn't just a victory for Lily. It marked a turning point in her relationship with Ethan. That evening, as they returned to the penthouse, Lily felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. She collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. You were incredible, Ethan said, sitting beside her. Lily looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you. Ethan smiled, but there was something deeper in his gaze. You could have done it without me. You just didn't have to. Their connection, once defined by obligation, had transformed into something genuine. They had faced their demons together and come out stronger. I never thought I'd say this, Lily began, her voice trembling slightly, but I don't regret marrying you. Ethan reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. I don't either. As they sat there, the city lights glittering beyond the windows, Lily realized that what had started as a desperate arrangement had become something far more meaningful, a partnership of equals, forged in fire and strengthened by trust. The weeks following the press conference were a blur of vindication and rebuilding. The media frenzy shifted focus from Lily's alleged scandals to the Whitmores' corruption. Lawsuits were filed, investigations launched, and the once powerful family found their empire crumbling under the weight of their own deceit. Lily, however, remained grounded. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of closure. Her father's name was cleared and the truth was finally out. But with that chapter behind her, a new question loomed. What came next? One crisp autumn evening, Ethan and Lily found themselves back at the penthouse, a rare moment of quiet amid their busy schedules. Ethan was seated at the dining table, reviewing contracts, while Lily stood by the window, gazing out at the glittering city skyline. I got a call today, Lily said, breaking the silence. Ethan looked up from his papers. From who? A former colleague, Lily replied, turning to face him. One of the few who didn't abandon me after everything. They want me to join their firm. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. And what did you say? I said I'd think about it, Lily said, walking over to the table. But I'm not sure I want to go back to working for someone else. I've been thinking about starting my own firm instead. Ethan's eyes lit up. You should. You're brilliant, Lily. And after everything you've been through, you deserve to carve out your own space. Lily smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. I wouldn't even be considering it if it weren't for you. Ethan stood, moving closer to her. You would have gotten here on your own eventually. All I did was remind you of what you're capable of. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world outside seemed to fade away. Lily felt her heart race as Ethan reached for her hand. Lily, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. This started as a way for me to escape my own problems. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like an arrangement and started feeling real. Lily's breath caught. She had been wrestling with the same realization but hadn't dared to voice it. "I know it's complicated," Ethan continued, "but I don't want this to end. Not after everything we've been through together." Lily's eyes welled with tears, but this time they were tears of happiness. "It's real for me too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that melted the last of Lily's doubts. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle yet firm. "Then let's stop pretending. Let's start over, this time for real." The following months were a whirlwind of new beginnings. Lily launched her own architecture firm, and with Ethan's encouragement and his connections, it quickly gained traction. Her first major project was a community center in the neighborhood where she had once been homeless, a tribute to her journey and a symbol of hope for others. Ethan, meanwhile, made changes of his own. He stepped back from the relentless demands of his family's company, focusing instead on projects that aligned with his values. For the first time, he felt free to chart his own course. Their relationship blossomed in ways neither of them had expected. They discovered each other's quirks and shared dreams, their bond deepening with every passing day. The world continued to watch them, but the opinions of outsiders no longer mattered. They had built a foundation of trust and love that was unshakable. On their first wedding anniversary, a date that now felt like the true beginning of their lives together, Ethan surprised Lily with a private dinner on the rooftop of their penthouse. The city lights stretched out around them, and a soft breeze carried the scent of roses from the garden Ethan had secretly arranged for her. As they toasted with champagne, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Lily," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "This time last year, I made a decision out of desperation, but it turned out to be the best decision of my life. You've changed me in ways I didn't think possible. You've made me better." He opened the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring, far more understated than the one she had received the first time. "This is me asking you not out of obligation or convenience, but because I love you. Will you marry me again? This time for real?" Tears streamed down Lily's face as she nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "1,000 times yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and as they kissed under the stars, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had found her way back from the depths of despair, and in the process, she had found love, not just in Ethan, but in herself and the life they had built together. Their story became one that people whispered about for years, a tale of redemption, resilience, and an unlikely love that defied the odds. But for Ethan and Lily, it wasn't a story. It was their life, and it was just beginning.